Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and I know you're all buzzing from the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. So I wanted to discuss it today. I wanted to do sort of a trailer breakdown, just the major parts of it, and then I wanted to discuss what it could mean for the movie from kind of a moviegoer's perspective, and then also, of course, what it could mean for Marvel Future Fight. But before we get into that, obviously, spoiler, not only for the trailer and for the trailer Far From Home, but also for Endgame. There are spoilers for both movies, so obviously if you don't want to know anything about this new movie before it comes out, and if for some reason you still haven't seen Endgame, you don't want to watch this video. So you have been warned. You're also warned at the beginning of the Far From Home trailer, which is a nice little touch that they did. But with that being said, let's jump into what happens. Now, I don't want to actually do a reaction to the trailer because YouTube sometimes likes to get funny with copyright, and you know they'll basically take the video and make it theirs, and so I just don't want to do that. I want, it's my content. I should be, I should get the clicks for it, etc. So we're just gonna talk about what happens. I'm gonna do a little verbal recap, a little summarization, and I'm gonna provide you guys with screenshots. So the trailer starts, and Spider-Man's sad. He's got his mask off. There's a train behind him. He's obviously somewhere new, or at least it seems kind of somewhere new that we haven't seen before, but it's probably just another part of New York. The camera cuts over. We see Iron Man. We see an Iron Man mural that someone drew. So obviously he's mourning the loss of Iron Man at the end of Endgame. Cuts to them presumably on a jet or some sort of airplane, and Spider-Man's been crying. Peter's been crying. Happy Hogan's with him, giving him sort of a pep talk. And Hogan mentions, Iron Man wouldn't have made this sacrifice if he didn't know that you were going to be here at the end, there at the end. And that's actually one of the major catalysts, if not the major catalyst, for Iron Man to actually start testing different theories for time travel at home, is when he's washing the dishes in Endgame, and he sees that picture behind the picture of his dad, which is a nice little foreshadowing to them going back to 1970 later on to get Pym particles and another Tesseract. But he actually grabs a photo behind that of him and Spidey, and he just has that immense guilt over, rebuilding his family with Pepper, but not even giving Spidey, Peter Parker, a chance to have a life because he was, erased in the snap. And so we actually have Spidey to thank for Iron Man finishing off Thanos and snapping in Endgame, which is pretty cool. Then we have the restaurant fight scene. We get a look at Spider-Man's current uniform in Marvel Future Fight, which is also the uniform that he has in Infinity War. It's the kind of Stark enhanced version with the insta-kill arms. We don't get to see insta-kill mode with the red eyes, but we do see his eyes shrinking and growing a lot as he's talking. We have jokes with the police officers that actually hints towards a theme that's going to become more heavily referenced in the rest of the trailer and possibly the movie, and it may have further implications for other movies that are coming later on in the future, and that is the cops saying, are you going to be the next Iron Man? And then Spider-Man says, well, I can't, I'm too busy doing your jobs. Then he cracks a joke, and then he says, hey, see you guys, finger guns, I'm going on vacation. Then we cut to kind of a more upbeat, cheery scene. Spider-Man's flying around. He's with Happy Hogan, presumably after he got that big check from one of the original trailers where he's with Aunt May. He got some sort of award, and he's getting a call from Nick Fury, and he rejects the call. So there's quite a bit of, it seems that there's quite a bit of humor interspersed in the movie, in addition to some heavy emotions with the loss of Iron Man and Spider-Man just trying to figure out where he belongs in the world as a teenager with friends, and also as, Earth's possibly major protector. As you'll find out a little bit later, it seems like everyone else is busy. And so we have another kind of joke scene. This guy, I don't know his name, he gets punched in his Pimdix, and he goes down. Then Fury, of course, finds Spider-Man after he blow darts his friend, I can't remember his name, Ned. So we've seen that again from a previous trailer, and then we start going into basically everything else from now on is new information, and it's actually quite interesting. So we see Quentin Beck again. We see Mysterio again with the mask off, with the helmet off, except this time he's introduced as just Beck. He's introduced by Fury to Spider-Man, which is where they're going on that kind of late-night Venice boat trip through the canals, which is quite interesting. It reminds me of Ocean's something, Ocean's 8, Ocean's 9. And basically, Quentin Beck's a good guy. The way that it's explained, Quentin Beck says we could use someone like you on our world, or on my world, or on our world. And it opens up with Nick Fury explaining that there's a multiverse, and Spider-Man saying there's a multiverse. And so that's essentially implying that presumably this Earth that we've currently been watching is 616, and this is 616 Spider-Man, Peter Parker, but this Quentin Beck is from another Earth. I don't know which Earth it is, Earth 2, Earth 6, or whatever, but it's not 616 Beck, presumably. So he's come from somewhere else, and the snap did something and sort of tore a hole in the realities and the dimensions, and so you have multiple versions of characters coming in, which is funny because it kind of aligns with the base story of Marvel Future Fight, and that's why you have evil versions of heroes, because they're coming in from different dimensions and yada yada yada. So that's pretty cool. But then we get another interesting development. Spidey basically says, well, can't you call on somebody else? And he says, what about Thor? What about Captain Marvel? And this is why I said before that it seems as though all of the other Avengers, all of the other heroes are busy or dead or retired, and there's just Spider-Man, which puts a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. And if you're a longtime Spider-Man fan, you know exactly what the word responsibility means to his legacy. And he's basically sounding like he doesn't want the responsibility. He just wants to be safe and be a student and be, a normal kid with his friends on vacation. He doesn't want to put the mask on. He doesn't want to put anyone's life at risk, and he also doesn't want to have the responsibility of having to protect everyone as Spider-Man, because it's not like the last movie, Homecoming, where he's got Iron Man to come and save his ass whenever he makes a mistake. It's him, and there's literally no safety net behind him. So I think it's a bit of fear mixed with a bit of just, young naivete with the lack of responsibility, which of course we know is so key and central to Spider-Man's development as a character. We cut to the elemental kind of monsters looking like Hydro Man motherfuckers attacking. We see the new stealth suit from Spider-Man, which will probably be a uniform in Marvel Future Fight. We see Mysterio flying, which is very cool. Hopefully he gets the ability to fly in Marvel Future Fight, because he doesn't have that right now. We then see Mysterio again fighting the elementals, kind of looking like Doctor Strange a little bit, which is pretty cool. We get a pretty big reveal that apparently MJ knows Spider-Man, or Peter Parker is Spider-Man, which I'm pretty surprised that she figured it out so quickly. It's kind of annoying, to be honest. We had the same thing with the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, where he told Gwen Stacy in like the first movie that he's Spider-Man. I kind of want him to keep his secret, his identity secret, just a little bit longer. I understand it's hard with Infinity War and Endgame, and especially if MJ didn't get dusted and he did get dusted and he was gone for what felt like 5 years to her. It would be kind of weird, and then suddenly Spider-Man's back and Peter Parker's back at the same time. So she's a smart girl. It's just kind of annoying in the universe in general that these characters cannot seem to keep their identities. Not even Batman in the DC movies can keep his identity, but that's Ben Affleck. I don't really care. We see more elementals. We see more Mysterio fighting, and Mysterio talking to Spider-Man about responsibility, which is a really interesting kind of switch. And it's kind of seems as though Mysterio is mentoring Spider-Man in a way. And if you think about it, Mysterio is kind of like your discount, broke-ass stepbrother version of Iron Man. He has no superpowers, presumably, unless he sort of lies to people. But in the comics, he has no superpowers, and he's just someone who's extremely good at utilizing technology, and he uses special effects and CGI and holograms. He's not nearly as good. He's not an engineer the way that Tony is. I'm not comparing him to Tony. He's not the genius that Tony is. But he kind of has that going for him. And he's a lot older than Spider-Man, so he has possibly wisdom to impart on Spider-Man, which is weird, because Beck is usually a really selfish dude in the comics, and he doesn't really give a shit about responsibility. Then Spider-Man says something different here. It seems like he's on another part of the jet with Happy Hogan again. He's got some sort of glove or some sort of hologram glove on his arm, and he says, the world needs the next Iron Man. But that implies that he's not the next Iron Man, which immediately makes me think of course, Ironheart. Now, if that's their way of verbally cueing in the introduction of future versions that are gonna take up the mantle of Iron Man, we could possibly even see Doctor Doom coming in and being Iron Man temporarily, because he also did that. That would be a huge stretch, but it might not be, considering the multiverse theory, which we'll get into later. And we could also see multiverse versions of Iron Man if the multiverse theory is real, but I think the most likely scenario right now is just someone new to take up the mantle, i.e. Ironheart. So that's pretty cool. And then you see Mysterio look like he's powering up, but it could also be him getting hit. It's kind of hard to tell because he flies away right after, but he has that green aura around him, and then he just kind of disappears on the left side of the screen. But I think it could be a kind of red herring. It looks like he's powering up, but it could be him getting hit by someone else who has the same sort of green properties in their magic, or looks like magic. And we'll get into that later. I'll discuss what I think that might mean. And then we see Iron Man with the second mural, and I actually like this one a lot more because it's also a memorial. You can see the flowers and the photos at the bottom there. And then also, if you look a little bit more carefully, you can see Tony's face drawn into the mask, which I think is a really nice artistic touch. Then you see a fire elemental attacking, a huge one, attacking the stealth suit Spidey, and he kind of dodges away. Then we get this cutscene with the title. We get Happy Hogan joking, which again implies that there's more humor in this movie, mostly built up by the interactions between Happy and other people, and then Happy and Spidey. The jet explodes, and then at the very end, when they're advertising the ticket sales, we see the other new suit for Spider-Man, which is basically, it looks sort of like his Civil War uniform, but it's more kind of black and red. There's not much blue, and it brings back those classic web. He's not showing it in any of these, but the web armpits. I don't know which one of his uniforms. I think it's this one that has the web armpits. Yes, he's showing off those webby armpits that help him sort of kind of glide around. So it's a pretty interesting, showing. So there's quite a bit to unpack from this this trailer. I'll start first with what I think of the trailer, and then I'll get into the Marvel Future Fight stuff at the end. As far as the trailer, I think the big question, the core question, is the multiverse. Is it true or not? Now, if the multiverse idea is true, if that's really a Quentin Beck from another universe, from another version of Earth, then they could use the multiverse theory to bring in the X-Men, to bring in Fantastic Four, to bring in so many new franchises, new villains. You could even have Kang coming around with time travel and stuff like that. It really just allows this last Phase 4, I believe, MCU movie to open the gates on anything coming next. And it basically allows them to justify introducing any new characters that they want into the next phase of the MCU. So I think that's a really awesome way to kind of end things off, to stamp things, and to not close doors, but actually to open up more possibilities and more opportunities. The multiverse idea could also bring Miles Morales into play because he's hinted, I believe, in Homecoming, but he's also, of course, the main character in Into the Spider-Verse. If you haven't seen that movie, it's amazing, and that whole multiverse idea is explored in that movie, and so they could do something really cool where Miles, at the end of his movie, his next movie, or perhaps at the end of this movie, Far From Home, Miles gets sucked out of his universe, which is in a comic book aspect, at least perspective, and he becomes a real-life, live-action actor, presumably, hopefully voiced or acted and voiced by the same guy who voices him now for Into the Spider-Verse. So there's a lot of really cool interplay, and I do appreciate what Sony is doing. There is some worry. I've seen some people complaining, or not complaining, but kind of projecting that the multiverse thing could allow Sony to take Spider-Man out of the MCU and into his own universe by himself, where there's no other MCU characters. But we'll have to wait and see, and it basically all just depends on whether the business relationship between Disney and Sony stays positive or not. Thirdly, I think the multiverse theory, if it's true, could be interesting because it could give us a movie with two Mysterios. And the basic premise of that, as far as my theory goes, because I haven't read this anywhere else, is that this Quentin Beck that we see at the beginning of the movie, who shakes hands with Spider-Man, is a good version of Quentin Beck, is a good version of Mysterio from another multiverse. And basically, our version, our 616 Quentin Beck, is not a villain yet. He's just a regular SFX guy, and he's watching on TV because there's a lot of television coverage of the elemental attacks, and we've seen it in the trailers where it shows through television screens, and then it cuts into the action after that. So presumably with all that television coverage, Quentin Beck sees Mysterio and gets inspired and thinks that he has a really cool suit and he's got really cool powers. And then he sees Spider-Man, and perhaps at the end of the movie, and again, this is all my own speculation, or towards the end of the movie, the normal or the good alternate reality, alternate universe Mysterio dies to the elementals, and then this 616 Quentin Beck becomes enraged and wants to take up the mantle of Mysterio, but he wants to get revenge on Spider-Man for allowing the Mysterio that inspired him to die. And so that's how you get the birth of the 616 evil Mysterio, and perhaps that's who's attacking the good Mysterio in the trailer when he gets hit by that green thing. I think it's a long shot. It's a pretty ambitious speculation, if I do say so myself, but it's just something that crossed my mind, because if you have multiverse, you can have multiple versions of characters, so why not? I mean, it's kind of weird, but it's very comic book appropriate. The last thing I could say, or the last thing I should say about the multiverse theory is that it could be complete bullshit. I don't know, I don't read like a lot of Mysterio comics, but from the few that I've read, he's made this multiverse claim at least once, and it's not far from the truth. That to expect that Mysterio would lie to make himself look like the good guy. Mysterio is all about the attention. He's all about the spotlight on him. And if he has the opportunity, he sees a chance to bullshit Shield, to bullshit Nick Fury, and to make up some threat and pose himself as this good guy. Especially if, on the other hand, bad guy Mysterio, has already been captured, and then he somehow escapes and poses as an alternate reality version of Mysterio, and he has like a hologram version of himself still in the jail cell and in the raft or whatever to kind of give himself an alibi. It could be a perfect way for them to not explore the multiverse theory just yet, but to have Mysterio, get in deep and get in close to the good guys, and then kind of turn and reveal himself as the bad guy in the third act. To add some extra drama to things and kind of spice things up. So it could definitely be bullshit. I think it's like 30-40% chance at least, because Mysterio loves to lie, but we'll have to wait and see. Finally, what can we expect from Marvel Future Fight? Well, at the very, very least, we will be getting a level 70 potential upgrade for Mysterio, and presumably a new uniform. It's pretty different than the one, the one he has in the movie is quite different from this one. It looks a lot more like Thor's armor from like Thor 1 and 2. So we should expect at least those two, and that's why a lot of people have been farming up Mysterio bios. You don't need more than about 900, so people saying they have like 2,000 Mysterio bios, that's really unnecessary unless you haven't tier 2'd him, because you only need 900 for the uniform. As far as Spider-Man goes, we can definitely expect a minimum of one uniform. We may get 2 uniforms with the synergy bonus that we've seen lately from Endgame, so you have an extra bonus tied to getting both his stealth suit and his new uniform. It's going to be interesting to see whether Netmarble wants to go that route, whether they want to push out as many new uniforms as possible, or if this was more of a one-time thing that they're going to use sparingly, not frequently when it comes to new updates. We could also see, I think a lot of people have kind of speculated, Tier 3 Mysterio. Now, it is a movie, and Ant-Man did get Tier 3 with his movie, but I don't know, something tells me that it might just be too soon for a sort of C or D tier character in Marvel Future Fight to get a Tier 3. Now, we do have very weak Tier 3 villains outside of Thanos. Magneto is, not impressive at all, but Mysterio is just like 1 to 2 steps down from Magneto, and unlike a lot of these other Tier 3s, Mysterio is very easy to farm. A lot of Tier 3s recently have been very expensive Tier 3s, whether they're native Tier 2s, whether they're premium characters, or whether they're Crystal Deluxe Pack. So, yeah, I don't know. Something tells me that there's a possibility we don't get Mysterio Tier 3. We just get a really powerful uniform for him. We possibly get a rework to Spider-Man's Tier 3 stats and or Tier 3 attack, Way of the Spider, because it's very underpowered, and Spider-Man himself as a Tier 3 is very underpowered. Hopefully we do get those things, but I'm not too sure about Mysterio. Who we could see besides that, we could see a renewed uniform for Nick Fury. The older eye patch Nick Fury, I think, is what a lot of people want to see, rather than this Captain Marvel Nick Fury. So we might see like a return of this one with, an updated look, which is more in line which would be more in line with the movies. We could see Maria Hill as well, because she seems to be featured a little bit more in this movie, especially if there are no other superheroes. And then kind of beyond that, I don't really think we're going to get anything else. I don't think we're going to get Hydro Man. I don't think the Elementals would be characters. I think it'll be an update that's kind of light on the heroes. It would be nice to see them do some sort of update to the Sinister Six in general, just because it ties into Spider-Man. They could do a Spider-Verse update in general and do upgrades to Spider-Gwen and Silk in $20.99. I mean, we would love new uniforms for them, and his all new and different is amazing. But at the very least, it would be nice if the other villains, along with Mysterio, got their buffs. You know, Sandman, Rhino, Vulture, Lizard. All of those guys need love, and then Longshot, but I mean even Dr. Octopus, and then possibly a new character like Scorpion. That's, of course, nothing to do with the movie, all to do with the comics, but, you know, if we're going to speculate, we might as well ask for as much as possible, and then whatever we do get will hopefully be as much as we could have gotten in the first place, or more than we could have gotten. Yeah. That makes sense. Anyways, hit me up with your speculation. Let me know what you thought of the trailer. I really liked it. It was a nice, fresh change from Endgame. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.